Hello and thank you for joining us. You're listening to a We Do Talk with David Jaques. Today's guest is a little bit like me. He's a veteran of the financial services industry, but has moved on to doing other things. He's also the founder of his own consulting, executive coaching, and leadership training. And it's my pleasure to have joined me today from North Carolina, John Laurito. So, John, very good afternoon to you. Welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you, David. Pleasure to be here. I loved our last conversation and been looking forward to this conversation.
So like I said, you've done something a little bit similar to me. You had most of your career in financial services, and you focus more now on leadership coaching, leadership training, and leadership is such an important thing within the corporate world, within public service, within schools, wherever it is. Having good leaders is something that's very critical. So we'd love to hear a lot of your thoughts about it, but I'm just intrigued to know first off, how does somebody go from the financial services, starting out as a financial advisor, to ending up doing leadership training? What was your journey there?
Yeah, great question. And it was an interesting story. I'd started as a financial advisor and realized that I was running my own business. And there was a lot of, as I got further along and realized the important ingredients of being successful, I realized leadership was a really key ingredient. And I got into more of formal leadership. So I had opportunities at that company to then run offices and take over distressed and almost dysfunctional places, which was about as high of a leadership challenge as you could have. And I made a ton of mistakes, but I also figured out a lot of great things and a lot of lessons and turned places around from at the bottom of the organization to the top and figured out kind of this formula and figured out these guiding principles around leadership that were able to be replicated no matter what the situation was for the most part. If you had these ingredients, ultimately you could have great success and lead people to great success and influence massive amounts of change. So, I'd spent 25 years in financial services and leading different organizations and different companies in different parts of the country and different situations. And I realized, I'm passionate about leadership, not almost obsessed with it. And I know that I knew that I could have a bigger impact in leading and teaching other leaders how to lead effectively. And so that's began my wheels turning and then the whole process of taking the big leap and starting my own company.
Now, some of the stories that I know you've shared in the past of where you were working for one financial institution and as you just mentioned, the office that you were given to take over was almost at the bottom of the rank of performance, and you were able to escalate that like way to the top. So within the same organization, how is that possible for one office to perform so poorly and another office to perform so well? Is that about the leadership of the company, or is it about the leadership at the individual office level, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's both. I mean, I think the leadership of the organization, this company had 110 offices across the country. So the decisions that they make at that global level there impact ultimately what's happening at each branch. And for me, I needed a leader of that organization to recognize and have the willingness to take a chance on an unseasoned leader, which I really was, and somebody who had a tremendous amount of willingness and desire and had a proven track record, but not to the degree that they would normally be looking for. So I think you need leaders that are willing to take a chance on people and invest in their development. And then as far as what makes that smaller organization successful, it's the leader at the helm. I mean, it's that's the first thing that you look at when a company and organization is struggling. It's the leader. And this first thing you look at when it's doing well. Now, there's a lot of ingredients there, but if you get the right person in place who casts a great vision, a powerful vision, gets the right people, knows how to get the right people mobilized in the right direction and doing the right things, then it's amazing what happens and how fast things can change. And that's what I was fortunate to find out.
I've worked for banks, as have you, and other financial organizations, but banks, brokerages, financial services companies generally tend to treat their people pretty well. They tend to pay well. You've got all of that predictability of salary, bonus potential, paid vacation, good health benefits. You gave all that up to go out on your own. How difficult was that decision for you to do that?
Oh, wow. It was, it's funny. It was incredibly difficult in some ways, and it was not in others because, and I'll tell you why it wasn't. I got to a point where I knew I needed to follow my dream. I mean, I got to a point where I woke up on Sunday mornings and I woke up, opened my eyes, and I hated Sunday mornings, and I was stressed and miserable because it was one day closer to Monday. And it wasn't even that I despised what I did. It just, I knew I was in the wrong thing and I wasn't able to do what I really wanted to do. So I think it was easy from the standpoint that I realized I had to take a risk and follow my passion and do what I truly believed that I had the capability of doing. At the same point, to pull the trigger and make that final decision and phone call or meeting to resign from a very comfortable, cushy, high paying job, and all the stability that comes with it was really scary. I mean, I remember sitting and I was resigning to somebody that was on another part of the country. So it was a phone call and to let the senior leaders know. And it was very tough. I mean, I took a picture of myself, a selfie right before I made that call to memorialize it almost. 2:30 in the afternoon on a Friday. It was just kind of crazy and surreal. But once I did it, I realized it was the right thing. I knew it. And as hard as that final call was, it needed to happen. And when I did, it was like everything just told me it was the right thing. Now, there was a lot that happened after that, which we can get to, which then made me second guess it. But that moment was incredibly invigorating.
And obviously, you had your idea of what you wanted to do, where you wanted to go. Maybe you'd even put feelers out already. But you've been doing this for a little while now. So tell us a little bit about your business today. What is it you do? Who are your clients? And what is your mission?
Yeah, it's funny, and it's changed. Not my mission has changed, but the way I go about things. Because when I did start, which I resigned on February 14th of 2020, 3 weeks before the pandemic, not knowing anything that was going to happen, that did happen. And my vision at that point was I was going to be on stages doing keynotes around the world, and that started what I had already started to do, and I had a whole bunch booked and everything like that. So that obviously quickly evaporated, which was my panic moment. And then I realized, there's many other ways, in fact, more effective ways to develop leaders and really make an impact. One is standing on a stage, which is incredibly an exhilarating experience to speak to thousands of people and have them each leave a little better than they came in. But it's 1 hour and it's done. Whereas what I do now, most of my time, I do a lot of keynotes, a ton of them, which I love doing, but most of my overall time is spent in longer term relationships, whether it's consulting with companies, and I work with leadership teams to really help close the gap. And what I mean by the gap is there's usually a very sizable gap between the CEO or the leader of the organization and the rest of the leaders. There's some kind of gap in that organization. And every top leader knows they need to fix that. They want to fix that, but they just don't have the bandwidth to fix that. They don't have the time. They don't have the capacity to do it. And that's what I do. I work along with my team to develop leadership skills and help organizations grow the way they need to. So it's group consulting with organizations, it's one-on-one executive coaching, and then it's also doing keynotes.
Right. Now, I'm going to fire a question at you that you probably don't know the answer to, but had you known what was coming down for the world with the pandemic, would you have gone ahead and done this in February of 2020, or do you think you would have waited a while?
I actually do know that answer because I've thought about it, and unfortunately, I would have made the wrong decision. But I know exactly what I would have done had I known the pandemic was coming. I would not have resigned, because it would have been I would have said, let me wait for this thing to end. Yeah. And then do it. I mean, who would want to start a business in this midst of this craziness and everything like that? But it's funny, I look back now and it was the best timing I could have asked for, because had I waited, I might still be there, honestly, David. The pandemic really in some parts of the country is still happening. It's just recently been, diminished so much that we can now get out and do, public events, things like that. But I don't know what would have happened, to be honest. And I look back and I'm like, I'm grateful of the fact that I resigned. Had I waited even a week or 2 weeks, the news media, and now it was very well known. So I literally resigned almost to the day at the right point. And it's been a blessing in disguise, because it turned out to be the best timing I could have asked for, ironically.
The other ironical thing was that had you waited, you probably would have been doing it because, oh, everything is going to go back to normal in a few weeks, a couple of months. None of us had any idea that it would be as prolonged as it ended up being. So you would have just kind of get put into that treadmill and just gone on and on. So that's great. And do you think that the pandemic has actually presented better opportunities for you? Because people have to really adapt the way that they think, don't they?
Yeah, it's interesting, because the need for what I provide has increased dramatically, because leaders have really been tested. I mean, it's one thing to lead an organization during calm weather and smooth sailing, but when things really get tough is when leadership is really needed and is really tested. And so all those little cracks start to become bigger, wider, and ultimately break apart a leader or the organization. And that's really what presented opportunities where people needed help. They didn't know, okay, how do I deal in this situation? I can't see people. How do I build a culture when it's all virtual? How do I hire people into an organization they can't even walk through the doors? How do I continue to build the organization? How do we reinvent how we do business and processes? And when we used to walk down the hall and hand each other things or do conferences. And so all of that, those questions, the confusion, the ambiguity, presented opportunities for somebody like me to help lead other leaders through that and help them see other ways and rethink the different ways to do things.
And you were probably learning as you were on the job and having to reapproach things from a different angle and rethink things, I would think.
I definitely did. I mean, my business model went from envisioning doing 50 keynotes a year to realizing that was going to be zero in person, at least. And yeah, there might be virtual ones, which there did become, but figuring even how to do that. How do you do a keynote in front of 500 people you can't even see, and we can't read body language. You can't tell if they're interested, if they're multitasking. I mean, it was just a really weird change. But then also thinking about how you deliver what you do. And I got some help. I mean, I tapped into a lot of people. Hey, what are you doing? How do I do this? I'm starting this. You're a little ahead of me. What are you doing? And what did you do? And what have you learned? And I got some great advice. And it helped me probably sidestep a few blunders that I might have otherwise made.
Yeah. And mentorship is something which is so important. I feel myself very fortunate that I've had many people that have been mentors to me and people that have asked for my help, and I'll always gratefully give it. But do you have good mentors and people that have done a lot for you, either people that you know or people that you get inspiration from?
I do, both. I mean, I love to study leaders, and some of them are even fictional. I love to watch examples of leadership in movies and in shows, the Ted Lassos and whatnot. I love watching different corporate leaders that have done and impacted our lives dramatically, like a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk, and just the visionaries that they are. And there's a lot of people close in my life, family, friends, business associates that have become friends because they've been mentors. There's people that early in my career identified as, wow, this person is the type of leader I want to be. They just seem like they are, if I could transform myself, this is who I'd want to be. And one of them is the person that I work with. That's my advisor and trusted advisor, Peter Velarde, who's been a close friend. And everybody needs that. I don't care if you're the president of a country, a CEO of an organization, or anybody. You need coaching.
And I don't know if you share this belief, but I've always thought that being the CEO of a company, or really being the number one in anything, is a very lonely place to be.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. I found that, it's interesting when I led large organizations. I mean, it is. People don't want to tell you things. Or they tell you what they think you want to hear. It becomes very
Yeah.
lonely. You don't really have people that you can share certain things, even sometimes your frustrations. You can't pull your team in and always tell them how you feel and disappointment and the ups and downs and the stress. So it does get lonely as you go up, and there are a lot of solopreneurs, business owners that are out there leading small businesses or starting new businesses. It's challenging. You've got to find, and you've got to be very deliberate and intentional about pulling people into your circle and creating that community that's going to help you succeed, whatever that may look
Yeah.
like.
And John, as we just said, that going out on your own, it's clearly something you've done. It's something that I've done in the past myself as well. It's a very intimidating thing to do, to give up a lot of that predictability that you might have. So if somebody came to you and asked you for a piece of advice, someone that has a great idea, has a passion, something that they really want to do, but they're scared of doing it, what type of advice would you give them?
A couple things. One is, don't feel the need to have everything mapped out. You're not, there's going to be things that as you get going, you're going to see that you just can't see from the starting line. And sometimes people try to map the whole route. They won't start the race or the journey until they've got the whole thing mapped out perfectly. And there's so many times where even if you do that, it's going to change anyway. So the thing you've got to really think about is, how strongly do you believe in your mission and your vision and your purpose? And if you have a strong belief and you truly feel that you have expertise and something to offer, a product or service, something that you're able to provide that fills a need that people have, and if it's something that can generate and people are willing to pay for it and can generate revenue, you love doing it, you're great at it, people love it and they're willing to pay for it, or people need it and they're willing to pay for it, that's the perfect intersection. You've got a winning formula there. Get started and take a step. Absolutely do your best to minimize risk. Build a cash reserve. Make sure you're being smart about it, but don't get paralysis by analysis. Don't get immobilized because you can't see the whole path to the finish line. I always use the analogy: if I'm on the shoreline of a lake, I see certain things, but when I jump in my kayak and paddle out to the middle of the lake, I see all kinds of things I didn't see before because I'm in the middle. I've got a different perspective. That's kind of the way life and business work too.
Yeah. And that's what I always say. I work a lot with startup companies, is that what you see today is not necessarily what you're going to see in 3 months from now. And you just have to be very nimble. You have to be able to adapt to it. You have to be able to just take the good with the bad, take the ebbs and the flows.
Yeah, you really do. And that was great advice that I got one time. Probably the best advice I've ever gotten was, I tend to be very focused and myopic sometimes. Or I had been. And the advice was given to me by Peter, actually. And he said, listen, sometimes you've got to pay attention to the signs. If there's a current, if you're in that boat and a current is suddenly taking you in a different direction, go with it. Don't fight it, because you're missing opportunities that are there because you got the blinders on so much and you're not seeing these great things that are there. They're there for a reason. Pay attention to those signs. I thought that was great
Yeah.
advice.
And definitely there's many things that we can benefit from just listening to other people. And even if we don't agree with them, quite often there are really good things out there that you can learn from others. So I'm a great believer in not burning bridges, keeping relationships, and business is all about people doing business with other people. So.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
John, I'd like to touch on a different aspect of your life. So, talking to you today, and I only just met you recently, but you're very personable. You come over as a very confident guy, but you've actually struggled with anxiety during your life quite a lot. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that journey?
Sure. Yeah. It was, About 25 years of my life, I'm 51, so about half of my life, I struggled with it significantly, to the point where it was debilitating. I mean, there was a point in my life where I struggled to have a one-on-one conversation with somebody. I would break out in a panic attack. I would have the familiar feelings and signs, panic attack, where I felt like I couldn't breathe, I couldn't talk, sweat beating down my face. And it progressed. It did not get better. Part of it was I didn't acknowledge it. I never talked to anybody, my family, my friends. It was only about 3 years ago that I started talking about it, believe it or not. And then my family, I have a twin sister, said, I never knew you had that. And I tell her everything. And it wasn't that I just want to keep it from people. I just felt like it would validate it. I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to give it legs. I didn't want to say the words panic attack. But that's very much what they were. And I would get myself into situations where I knew there were certain triggers, and for me it was various things. If I felt people there, and whether it was or not, people were looking at me, and more than one person at one time. If I felt I was in situations that I couldn't escape easily, if I was, and there's so many situations like that. If I went to a restaurant at a table, and I felt like I couldn't get out of that, I would get into a panic attack, and I couldn't leave the table without being really awkward about it. That it was that type of simple stuff. And I remember getting to a point where it was really probably the worst of the worst was one day being asked to speak in front of an audience. I had some success with turning around an office, and my boss or boss's boss asked me to do a presentation in front of 70 people. These were all leaders across the country across the company, and many of which I knew. So it was people in the audience that I had relationships with, and I had a full-blown panic attack on the stage, and I froze. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't speak. They could visibly see something was wrong. I think they thought something health-wise was wrong. It looked like I was having a heart attack, I think. And I ran off the stage. I mean, I think about that. I mean, just, you don't see that. You don't see people run off a stage. And I ran off the stage, and just, it was just the most horrific experience in the world. And I know some of your audience may be listening saying, boy, you know what, I can relate to that because I've had that. And it's amazing how many people I've told about panic attack. I've talked about it. The more I talk about it, the more people come to me and say, I've dealt with that. I know what you're talking about. And, you know, for me, it was this internal battle. And I finally, and again, I think I could have done it in 3 years, not 25, had I gotten the right help. But I finally figured out these, what I call panic attack hacks. I figured out ways to stop them. And it was basically, it's like a switch in a room, an on-off switch. If you know how to turn it on, you know how to turn it off. And if I could figure out how to cause the panic attacks, literally, if I could trigger one and create one, it gave me the sense of control. I knew how to turn it off. And that's what I got to. I got to that point where I could, on command, start a panic attack. And I needed to do that to gain control over it. And then I figured out these different hacks. Okay, when this happens, here's what I do. And it was just this method that shut them down. So it's still in the back of my mind when I do a big presentation, but I have total confidence that if it did start, I could shut it down immediately. And that's the difference.
And of course, there's a big difference between having some anxiety, which I can look at sometimes as some very positive stress. You know, if you're going out to do something that you're really excited about, but there's some positive anxiety about it, it will be unnatural not to have any whatsoever. But if you do think you're going to get to that debilitating point, then you really need to plan for that. And, one of the things which is funny, I'll just kind of mention here, is that a number of people that I've talked to on this channel who've done incredible things with their life have battled addiction, alcoholism particularly. And one of the things which I've learned, and I've learned so much about addiction, I've never actually had an addiction problem myself, but I've learned so much about it by talking to other people. And that is that if an alcoholic is going to, say, a wedding or a party or something, they have to plan for that. You don't just go in and assume that you're going to be fine. You have to plan for it. You have to have your your plan for the evening, for the time, whatever it is, and know what you're going to do if certain triggers happen, and when you might even have to just leave out of a social situation. So it's really interesting that you say that you can actually have some back pocket tools, if you like, so that if it does happen, you know what to do. So that's great. And did you pretty much learn that yourself, or did you learn that through therapy?
You know what? I wish I learned it through therapy. Again, I didn't want to give it any kind of validation, so I didn't even seek therapy. I did learn it myself. It took a long time, but I think the important thing for people to realize is it's not that urge for an addict doesn't go away for many people. And again, I haven't been an addict myself, so I don't know firsthand, but I do understand that when you say they've got to go in with a plan, it's no different than what I do. It's not that the possibility is not there that my mind and body start to feel and go into that trigger mode of a panic attack. It's just the fact that I have a plan and I know how to handle it. And then the fact that I have a plan and I know that I've used it before very, very successfully and over again, it gets to the point where you have so much confidence that you can shut it down that it doesn't even start to begin with. So that's ultimately where you get to. And anybody, I'm confident anybody can do that. And I'm happy to, talk to anybody or help anybody if they would like to, just from my own experience. But I learned that through a lot of trial and error. And I wish I had sought therapy, to be honest with you. That would have shortcutted that a lot.
Well, John, I really appreciate you talking about this and talking about it openly, because that is part of the education about any mental illness issue. It's all about educating the public, people understanding, people knowing what it's like, even if they're not afflicted by it themselves. And the more that we talk about it, the more we take away the stigma. And if you can present yourself as, I am a highly functioning person that has a lot of successes in my life, and I've also dealt with this problem. There's thousands of people out there, possibly even somebody watching this, who's doubting themselves, who truly doesn't have that confidence and that belief because of what's going on. And whether it is anxiety or addiction or depression or anything like that, the more that we talk about it, the more that we let people know it's okay, the more we can move towards taking away that stigma. So thanks for sharing.
My pleasure. Thanks for allowing me to share, David.
So John, before we wrap up, what's in the vision for your future, for your company, your business, yourself personally? What are the things that you want to do in the next few years?
Yeah, I'm working on some very exciting things right now, and that's building out my team so that I can work with and help different organizations and a lot of capacity to do that. So I've written a book called Tomorrow's Leader, which is one piece of my overall vision, which will lead to several others. So I am in the beginning stages of planning my second one. But my vision really is, I've had so much success and experience in financial services. I've now been grateful to broaden into other industries and realize, wow, there's so much leadership expertise that can be exchanged across industries where people can look, because we all get kind of surrounded in our own silos, so to speak, sometimes, and we learn and just build from our knowledge within the industry. But when you break that open, the learning is phenomenal. So my vision really is moving more and more into other industries, working more and more globally across the world with leaders who want to really tap their potential. And that's continuing my podcast, doing keynotes, doing consulting, coaching, and just expanding the impact and influence.
Great. Well, I wish you every success with it. And if somebody would like to contact you or find out more about your services, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, the easiest way is my website, which is my name, johnlaurito.com, and they can find everything there, information on our company, myself, our book, the podcast, everything, as well as the podcast. They can subscribe to that. It's Tomorrow's Leader. You're going to be a guest on there in a moment, so looking forward to getting that episode out. I'm sure they'll enjoy that, and they can subscribe to that. That's also on YouTube as well.
Okay, well, once again, John, thank you for sharing your business experiences, your personal experiences, and I wish you every success, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. I'd love to do that.
And thank you for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave your comments below and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you next time. We upload a We Do Talk every week, so if you enjoyed this one, please subscribe and leave your comments below.